You know,
There are other survivors. Hey everybody, welcome to AtheistImpact, episode 9. This is your host, Spencer. I'm going to drop the Xander moniker because, well, it's not really who I am. Just a part of who I am. And I like to be as much of me as I possibly can be while I'm doing the podcast, if nothing else. So I hope that all of you have had a wonderful past couple of weeks. Past couple of weeks for me have been just kind of here, there, and yon. I have spent, I took an extra day off of work last week, and this past Tuesday was the extra day off that I took, so I had a 3-day weekend, and it was beautiful weather here in Seattle on Sunday, and the next couple of days were tolerable and actually quite enjoyable. And it was nice and relaxing, and it gave me a chance to just kind of find my center again, I guess I should say. I think there's one thing that this connected world and being on podcasts and just the internet in general and YouTube and everywhere is that you kind of tend to feel completely and totally overwhelmed. There's always something to do. There's always something to check. You got to go and check Facebook. You got to check comment sections of YouTube videos. You've got to go and check your Twitter account. You've got to check your email. There's just so much going on, and sometimes I actually start to feel, I start to feel like maybe I'm not getting old, just getting to that point where I actually find that the world moves a little bit fast. I remember a couple of times sitting watching TV with my whole family, and some of the, not cartoons. We did not watch very many cartoons as a family, but, actually my dad and I'll get back to this in a second. I'll try and remember this by saying The Simpsons. Okay. So we would sit down and we would be watching commercials, and a commercial would be over, and it would be one of those fast moving cutscene, Michael Bay style commercials where it was just scene after scene after scene after scene, cutscene, 27 different camera angle changes or camera cuts over the course of, 30-second commercial. And both of my parents would be sitting there just kind of, what just happened? Very lost. And I remember thinking, great, my parents have gotten old. They can't keep up with TV commercials nowadays. And now I'm starting to find that it's not that I can't keep up, it just annoys the hell out of me. Just the constant cuts. I don't know how many people notice that a lot of, news doesn't really do it all that much, but definitely, people that have their own talk show, not even talk shows, I don't know, definitely on YouTube. A lot of people use a lot of cuts and they'll change camera angles and they think that it's all snappy and cool and everything. And really it's just annoying, and I can't imagine actually trying to edit that type of video unless they're just screwing up so much that they have to edit it, and so they just, whatever. But anyway, so I feel sometimes like I'm turning into my parents and that I'm getting a little bit older, which also reminds me that last time I mentioned that I compare myself to my dad quite a bit, and that in general I compare myself to a lot of different people. And I wanted to just kind of hit on that and just say that I received one email that specifically said, stop comparing yourself to other people. You're unique, you're an individual, and you have your own desires and dreams and hopes and plans. And I completely and totally agree. And my point when I brought up that I compare myself to my dad a lot was not to say that I judge myself based on where my dad on my dad's life and on my dad's accomplishments. Because I constantly actually remind myself that, it's a little catchphrase that I've seen on the internet a few times, is that when you compare yourself to other people's lives, you're comparing it to their highlight reel. And that definitely grabs it and says, okay, that's exactly what you're doing. I look at the successes of other people and I see, I place value on their actions, and I place value on their accomplishments and the things that they've done, having children, having a house, having a career, those types of things. And I do compare myself to a degree, but I don't look down upon myself and say that I'm not meeting the expectations that I have placed on myself based on where other people were in my life. I don't do it anymore. I used to do it. And so that's probably why it came off as such. But I just wanted to clarify that I don't really compare myself to my dad, in the sense that my dad was so far ahead of me, because I actually find myself so far ahead of my dad in many other areas. I'm much more open-minded. I mean, I don't claim that I'm better than my dad in any way, but I don't believe in gods. And to me, that's kind of a jump forward. At least I'm willing and able to say it out loud. Maybe not to my family, which is another point that I would like to address. I haven't come out to my family as an atheist for the number one reason being my mom. My mom suffers from a lot of the same things that I have suffered from in my life. She suffers from depression. She suffers from not feeling as though she's worth anything. She was raised in a household that constantly degraded her, and it was a lot of psychological abuse in the sense that anything that my mom did was never good enough. So kind of that comparison that I seem to make with myself, and I'm not living up to my standards based on me looking at my dad. That's how my mom actually was made to feel her entire life as she was growing up. She then married my dad when they were 19 years old, and they've been married ever since, which, totally cool. And I'm one of the few friends that I've met over the years that hasn't had some sort of divorce in their family's history. Actually, both my sisters are still married, have been married for over 10 years now to their husbands. And as far as I know, there aren't any problems. And personally, I almost got married once, and I didn't. And so no divorce in my history either, although a lot of my friends have gone through one or even two divorces so far. But because my mom has always been a housewife, and she was always the homemaker, and she stayed home, she never had a job. The jobs that she did have, she went and got a college education. Her and my dad both have college educations, and my mom was actually went to college and became, I'm pretty sure she became I'm not exactly what her degree was in, but basically she was able to be a teacher. And so, but she never took that job because she had my oldest sister when she was in her mid-20s, and actually early-ish 20s. And so dad was doing odd jobs here, there, and yon, and it was enough money to live in, yes, the trailer. We lived in a trailer. We were in a house by the time I was born, but my family did live in a trailer before I was born. And so there was enough money there. There was enough money everywhere, so there was no real need for my mom to work, and so my mom didn't work. And then my dad joined the Air Force, and so then it was, okay, now we're moving to these foreign countries, and we're living off base. And so because we're living off base, pretty much my mom just had the interaction with the church ladies, and so they would have their PWOC. Anybody that knows about that, Protestant Women of the Chapel, is what it was called. It was like the military's version of the wives getting together and having Bible studies. I'm pretty sure. They did other things too. I know that when we were in Holland, my mom with the PWOC actually they took a trip to Garmisch. In Berchtesgaden in Germany. And then I think when we were in Sicily, they also went to Venice. So, they did things. It wasn't just everybody get together and have tea and crumpets and talk about Jeebus. So anyway, she never had a job. And so she was an awesome mom. I mean, if I ever say anything negative about my mom, it's not my mom that I'm saying negative things about. It's the beliefs and some of the upbringing decisions that she made. I love my mom, and she's really awesome on the surface. When you get to know her, and if you know her, especially as, one of her kids, she's much more complicated. She has always played the role of feeling like she has to be the happy housewife, the happy mother, the happy wife. And she has always identified herself as being my dad's wife, not my mom. And I just can't give you her name, but she's never identified herself as her own person. She's always identified herself by her role. And a lot of people do that. We do that all the time with our jobs. It's like, I'm not a person. I'm a janitor. I'm not a person. I'm the CIO of this company, that sort of thing. And we put on those masks, and it does help us to cope with the fact that sometimes we don't feel like we have our own purpose, and we don't have our own goals and our own desires. And a lot of times we feel like we don't have the ability to pursue those dreams and those desires. And so I think that's one of the main reasons why my mom really got caught up in fundamentalist Christianity, is because she spent so much time trying to find somewhere to fit in. And suddenly, I mean, she had great and wonderful care and concern for raising her children correctly. She really wanted all of us kids to grow up and meet the highest levels of success that we showed our potential for. One time, there have been a couple of gaffes that my mom has made over the years, one of which was that I was supposedly unplanned. And I said that once, and I was like, well, I was unplanned. And she was like, no, that's not true. It's like, Mom, you said it. And, just kind of joking around. And I like to joke around with my mom about this stuff. I like to joke around with my mom about some of the crazy stuff that she put us through when we were kids. And she doesn't take it very well. And that's one of the reasons that I both continue to do it, so that hopefully eventually she'll just kind of laugh it off and know that I'm not making a serious issue of it. And also to let her know, to a degree, just kind of dropping hints of kind of like, Mom, this was kind of crazy. And sometimes I would just like my mom to recognize that what she put us through as kids, what she went through, was kind of crazy. Because it was crazy. So anyway, so my mom has always identified as her role. She still, and probably always will, act like I'm the youngest of the kids. And so I'm always going to be the baby, and I'm also the only one that's single, and I don't have any kids, so I'm also always kind of going to be the one that, if everybody's going to Oklahoma for Christmas, then, nobody's ever even going to think about coming up to Seattle for Christmas, because there's only Spencer up in Seattle. Everybody else is in Ohio or in Oklahoma, so everybody's going to go there, and then we'll just bring the one black sheep back into the fold for a couple of days for Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever. So anyway, so my mom, because she identifies as roles, she's lost who she is. And over the years, I've watched her grow a little bit in that way. A lot of it, she's gone and talked to different preachers and pastors. They did some church hopping for a while. And I've had some conversations with her. I had some conversations with her when I was back in Ohio about her still basing all of it and still looking at it from a biblical sense and from a Christian sense and a Christian mindset. She looks at it as maybe her gift isn't to be not a caregiver, because she's definitely a caregiver, but now that, the kids are out of the house, she's got the empty nest syndrome. And so my mom has always felt like she needed to be the socialite. She always felt like she needed to be the compassionate one. And so she would find herself in church situations and gatherings and whatnot, and she would just despise it. She hated having to deal with the people. She hated having to talk with other people. And so she talked to her pastor, and in some decent advice, especially for a pastor, the pastor actually was like, maybe that's just not your style. Maybe that's not your gift. I mean, the way that it's packaged in the Christian mindset is, everybody has their own special gift that God has given them. And that special gift that God has given them is what they need to pay attention to. And if they attempt to go against that gift that God has given them, then it's always going to fail, or it's just not going to further the cause. Those of you that were ever Christians in Sunday school or vacation Bible camp or something along those lines, you may or may not remember when they talk about the body of Christ and how we're each a different individual part of the body of Christ. Now, obviously, you could go off in perverted ways on that, and I'm going to let that go because it's just a cheap laugh, but I'll giggle nonetheless. But, so, you had the feet. So the feet of Christ, as being a part of the body of Christ, you were the feet. You were the ones that went out into the world and did the door-to-door campaigns and were constantly starting up conversations with strangers and telling them how great and wonderful it is to have God in your life, and that Jesus has given you this wonderful and awesome purpose. And, that was what the feet of the body of Christ would do. And the hands of the body of Christ would go out and give. They would help the needy. They would comfort the grief-stricken, I guess. They were the ones that did things. They were the people that did, I guess, well, Habitat for Humanity. I guess that's not really religious, but actually, I don't even know if it is. But anyway, they were the ones that actually put their hands into application and they did things. And then there was the head, and the head was always the people that were in the leadership, the pastors and the preachers, the ones that maintained the flock so that the flock would be able to learn and try and figure out what part of the body of Christ they were. Now, we never really talked. I mean, I don't actually remember anything more than talking about the hands, the feet, and the head of Christ. Well, no, I take that back. I guess there was like the heart of Christ. Those were the people that were, I guess those were the ones that were more the comforting and the ones that would, they would do the outreach to the sick. And it was like, I can't go and I can't make these people better, although we did believe in the whole faith healing and laying on of hands and that sort of deal. But they weren't the ones so much that were going and feeding the homeless and taking care of the needy. They were the ones that were going and ministering to the sick and the bedridden. And like my grandparents, they would always go around every Sunday. They would record my grandma and my grandpa were ordained ministers in the Methodist Church, and they would record my grandpa's sermon. They would come home, they would use that tape, and they would run off a whole crap load of copies of that tape and make copies of their sermon. And then they would leave later on that afternoon, and they would drive to all of the older people that couldn't make it to church and give them a copy of the tape. And, take back the tape from last week so that they could re-record it for the next week and that kind of thing. So anyway, I guess the heart of Christ was kind of the people that were the compassionate ones and the ones that would actually go out and help. Not in the here's a sandwich or anything like that sort of way. But so anyway, when you're in a church environment, then you're always encouraged to find that gift, the gifts of the Spirit, and Romans 8:1-12. Romans 12. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto Him, which is your reasonable service. Be not conformed with this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, which is your reasonable. No, I'm repeating it. But the next line's after that. So if anybody remembers where that is, it's in Romans, and it's either chapter 12 or chapter 8. I'll try to flip through it real quick. By the way, last time, here's another tangent here. Last time I mentioned the Skeptic's Annotated Bible, and I was using it as a as a mic stand, and I kind of wanted to give this a fair shake again. So let me go ahead and find real quick in Romans. Here's Romans 9 and 10. Let's go to Romans 10. And off to 11, no, off to 12. Okay, so it's 12. So Romans 12, verses 1 through 8. Having the gifts differing according to the grace that is given to us, whether prophecy, let us prophesy according to the proportion of faith, or ministry, or exhortation, giving, mercy, and etc., etc. So basically, again, Romans 12 is what I was talking about, where whoever wrote Romans, was that Paul? He mentions that everyone has different gifts. And the whole idea and the whole concept is to find your gift so that you are so that you make the biggest impact within the church. So the long story turned into a very short synopsis here is that my mom, after talking to a pastor, was basically told, maybe your gift isn't to go out there and be the heart. Maybe your gift is to be, the hands, to actually put your hands to good use and actually, and do a different thing. You don't have to be smiles all the time and be the shoulder to cry on if that's not what you want to do. And if you're not comfortable with it, because if you're not comfortable with it, then again, in the Christian mindset, then you're going to think, well, if I'm uncomfortable, then that must mean that I don't have an easiness in my spirit. If I don't have an easiness in my spirit, I must be going against something that I shouldn't be going against. Not in no sense that, God's going to strike me dead if I continue doing this, but more along the lines of, that peaceful spirit, which I think that peaceful spirit really is just a psychological comfort with the things that you're doing. you feel that way when you go into a job. I mean, there have been a couple of jobs that I've taken in my lifetime that after a day or two, I've gone, no, this is not for me. This is not only is this uncomfortable, but it just grates against every fiber of my being, and I want nothing to do with this place. And I've walked out of those jobs. I tried to walk out nicely instead of leaving anybody hanging in the lurch. But anyway, so my mom has been struggling to find her identity, and she is the reason, to bring it full circle, she's the main reason why I haven't come out as an atheist. I also don't feel that it's necessary because, well, I feel it's necessary. I just don't feel that it's necessary for me to push myself forward any faster or any sooner than I plan on coming out. Do I plan on coming out of the atheist closet? Yes, I do. Is it something that I'm going to be doing in my own time? Yes, it's something I'll be doing in my own time. And it's something that I fully intend to do. But the damage that it's going to do to my relationships with my parents, especially with my mother, is something that I have to accept and something I'm going to have to come to terms with. My mom, honestly and truthfully, believes that she is going to spend eternity with her children in heaven. And while there is a possibility that my mom could be swayed from her belief, I don't believe that that's a possibility, and that's not something that I can rely on. I cannot rely on me coming out to my parents and telling my mom, here are the reasons. Here are the reasons why I don't believe anymore. Because my mom will turn it around and make emotional appeals and quote the Bible and quote scripture and tell me that she's got the feeling deep down inside her that it's true. And anyone that's had conversations with believers knows that that feeling is as real to a believer as 2 + 2 = 4. It's such a part of their psyche. It's such a part of who they are and who they've become and what they believe that it's next to impossible to extricate that. Now, do I have hope? Yeah, I really do. I hope that both of my parents will, before they die, that they embrace reality and that they stop relying so much on a God that has never helped them. And that's part of the problem as well, I think. My family has not suffered a lot of adversity. We haven't gone through a lot of bad, especially since my family picked up the very fundamentalist Christianity. I mean, I would say that the biggest bad thing that my family's gone through has been just the death of my grandparents. I'm down to one, but also at the same time, that was just that was all sort of expected. My parents were grandparents were sort of in bad health, and they were in their 80s, mid-80s when they died. So, I mean, my mom's dad died back in the 80s, but he was a smoker his entire life, and so it wasn't a surprise. None of it was a surprise. We never had anyone ripped from I had a cousin that died, and again, we didn't have a whole lot of adversity. And so when you don't have a lot of adversity, it's like praying to the milk jug. If you pray to the milk jug that your house never gets broken into and your house never gets broken into, then you think that you praying to the milk jug is the reason why you never get your house broken into. It's the same thing with God. If you're praying to God that he keeps all of your belongings safe and he keeps you safe and he keeps your kids safe and that everybody has a great and wonderful day and everybody ends up having a great and wonderful day, then you're going to say, well, see, obviously that's God. God did it. And I can't remember what that one is. Post hoc ergo propter hoc? Yeah. Can you tell I'm trying to learn more things? So... but anyway, so that's how my family is. My family looks at it as we haven't faced adversity, and the reason we haven't faced adversity is because of our belief in God. When the reality of it is we make logical decisions every day. We make rational decisions every day. We don't put ourselves into harm's way, and then we throw on, and I say we as in my family before I was an atheist, and then we would throw on the dressing of saying our prayers at the end of the day, saying a prayer before we eat our food. Nobody died from the shrimp cocktail, so God must have been protecting us, or quite possibly the shrimp cocktail was just chilled long enough. I mean, it's just, that's the mindset that you're dealing with. Bad has not happened because God is protecting you. How do you argue against that? And I know that my mom is going to internalize a lot of, when I say, Mom, Dad, I no longer believe anything that you taught me growing up about God and religion and the Bible and all that jazz. I'm sure that their first reaction is going to be, oh crap, he's gone Muslim on us. And then, actually, no, they would probably think that I had gone Buddhist since I've calmed down a lot in the past few years. And I've made jokes before about meditation and Eastern mysticism. But no, that it's just, I don't want my mom, there's that side of me that doesn't want my mom to suffer in any way, any more than she already has and any more than she already does with the internal demons. But the reason that I know that I will tell her is because as much as I love my mom, I want my mom to know that this life is all that we get to share with each other, and this life is all that we're going to have together. And even if I'm wrong, and I don't know, even if we did end up in heaven, this is still so much better. At least I think so. This is where we get to make our decisions. This is where we get our choices. This is where we get to say we love each other because we care about each other. We get to exercise our empathy. We get to exercise our compassion and our love for one another, as opposed to being forced to. When you get to heaven, and this is a question for a different podcast, I'm sure, but when you get to heaven, are you able to say, I don't love that person? Do you have free will anymore? Because if you don't have free will anymore, then you love simply because you're forced to. And you created a situation, you've created the exact paradise that God claims to have wanted, that Yahweh claims to have wanted to create, which was a world where everyone praised him and spent all of their time worshiping him and having communion with him. But if you don't want to, and yet you have to for an eternity, what kind of positive benefit is there to that? And that's why heaven has been turned into this awesome, marshmallow clouds and pearly gates and golden roads and streets paved with gold, that sort of thing. That's the reason why, is because if the reality of it was that we were simply there to give hand jobs to Yahweh, and that we were going to be doing that for eternity, and then nobody would want to have anything to do with it. So anyway, I haven't come out yet, and I don't even necessarily, do I encourage people to do so? Yes, if you are safe and able to, and it's not going to detrimentally affect your life or your job or your marriage or any of those things, then yeah, I do truly believe that you should come out. But I would never force anyone to come out. And I would never advocate of forcing anyone to come out. And you could call me a coward if you want to, but it basically is, it's a chess game right now for me. And eventually I will make my move, but not yet. And so just allow me that, just as I allow everyone else that exact same courtesy. So The Simpsons. Since I said that I would come back to this from very early on. One of them, and if you've ever seen The Simpsons, it's extremely irreverent, and it's, obviously it's extremely irreverent to a Christian family, especially a fundamentalist family. Bart is, the worst kid that you could possibly ever have. He's, belligerent, and he doesn't listen, and he disobeys, and even at the very beginning, it starts with him getting in trouble at school. It's like, what kind of role model is Bart Simpson? And when The Simpsons came out, what was Bart Simpson's catchphrase? Was it, bite me? Crap, I can't even remember what it was. It's been so long. Yeah, so anyway, so we didn't watch The Simpsons in my house, obviously. We actually had, I've talked about the schizophrenic nature of my childhood before, and I remember one time I was watching Tool Time, and it was one of the ones that had quite a few sexual jokes in it, and my parents overheard what I was watching, and they said, what are you watching? I said, I don't even know, just turn to this channel, and they were like, well, don't watch that anymore. And so we turned that off. I turned it off and went to, some other TV channel. watch some other show. And 2 years later, Tool Time was my family's favorite TV show. Whatever night it was on, we all sat down and we started watching the TV show. And finally that episode played. And I was like, Mom, Dad, do you remember 2 years ago when you told me to change the channel because of this episode? Oh, we never did that. We never said that. We never told you to turn that off. Complete and total denial that we ever even had that conversation. And of course, I'm sitting there going, geez, are you kidding me? I mean, it didn't make sense to me that suddenly my family was watching the TV show that I was told just 2 years prior was, too sexual and too dirty. And it's just, all the time those kinds of things happened. By the time I was getting into high school, things were starting to get a little bit more relaxed. And so The Simpsons, which was like I said, it was the focus of all of the Christian fundamentalist groups that were talking about how the fabric of society was falling apart because of things like The Simpsons and this and that and the other. And it was so hilarious when you look back on it, especially when you actually look at it. I mean, sure, maybe at the time it was it was irreverent, and it still is. Not as much as Family Guy. I mean, Family Guy, I think, came out because The Simpsons was no longer, it seems to me like Family Guy came out as an answer to South Park. How do we get the complete and total holy shit factor of South Park onto TV? And we can't do it with The Simpsons because The Simpsons have now been accepted into mainstream culture. They're everywhere. They are just The Simpsons. And so anyway, I think that's why Family Guy came out, was to take it another step. But I remember one time The Simpsons came on Fox, and I just didn't turn the channel. I was probably 16 or 17 years old. Simpsons came on, and my dad comes walking into the room, and I'm like, great, here we go. My dad's going to tell me to turn it off. Next thing I know, my dad's sitting down next to me on the couch, and we're watching The Simpsons, and my dad starts laughing. And then I start laughing, and I'm laughing because my dad's laughing. My dad's laughing at The Simpsons, and and that was it. It was just those simple things. It was those, as we matured as people, as my parents matured as adults, I suppose. I mean, we're talking, mid 90s around this time. So my parents were in their mid 40s. Is that right? Yeah, mid 40s. And so my parents were kind of starting to get a little bit more relaxed. And so as time went by to the point now, I remember, we'll say about 7 or 8 years ago up here in Seattle, my parents and I went to dinner. They came up and visited me, and we went to dinner, and we were just talking about stuff, and I don't even know how we got onto the subject, but we started talking about creationism and evolution, and it was at that time that I believed that evolution was essentially, the creationism, I had already rejected creationism and young earth creationism. So young earth creationism was not something that had been a part of me ever since I heard about the gap theory. When I heard about the gap theory, which is supposedly between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth became without form and was void, and the Spirit of the Lord was over the face of the deep. At that point, the people that came up with the gap theory said that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Okay, created the heavens and the earth, and things just kept on happening and kept occurring. And then the rest of the Genesis creation story was just kind of, it was anthropomorphism of what actually happened based on the natural laws of nature. The universe was, at the time, I think we were saying it was about 14 billion years old. It's been finely tuned, to borrow a phrase. I actually, what is it? It's not Planck. Crap. One of the ESA satellites just recently took a more accurate picture of the background, cosmic background radiation, and it's refined the age of the universe to 13. I want to say it's 13.8 billion years, and it was 13.7. So we had 13.7, and then with this better mapping, it was actually 13.8. So we've gained 100 million years, which is a lot. That's a lot of time. I mean, and it's also awesome. It's like, this is so cool that the scientific discoveries are occurring in my lifetime. I mean, the cosmic microwave background was something that was discovered before I was born, but it's been completely, we've taken pictures of it. I think it was with the WASP satellite, and now it's with the other one. I can't believe I can't remember it now that I'm doing this. Of course I can't. I'll remember it as soon as I hit stop and not be recording anymore. But and it's just, we're learning so much in just my generation, that it's awesome. It just really is. But anyway, so my parents and I are talking about it, and I told my parents, I was like, look, I believe in evolution. I was like, I don't really know how humankind and God work into it, but evolution is true. It's not something that's even questionable. The scientific consensus on evolution, again, this is like back in 2005 or so, 2005, 2006. As the scientific consensus is that evolution happened. And if we're going to reconcile this with our belief in a God, and our belief in the Bible, and our belief that the Bible is true and accurate representation of things that happened, then first of all, you got to do a lot of dances. You have to change a lot of things around. You have to say that this is allegory, and this is metaphor, and this is poetic, and this is this, and none of it can actually be viewed as, well, at least the creation story can't be viewed as accurate historically or scientifically. And so I came up with my own version of what I thought I thought the truth was, and that was essentially that at some point, and this has been punctuated by Christopher Hitchens, or it was punctuated multiple times by Christopher Hitchens, was that after a long period of time, after evolution, which, however it was kicked off, abiogenesis occurred, life came about, and then everything it was kind of an early intelligent design sort of mentality. I didn't believe that everything was intelligently designed so much as I believed that we reached a point where God looked down and saw humankind and said that is what I want to have a relationship with. That being is what I want to bestow with a soul, and breathing the breath of God into that first humankind, or that first human, which obviously I believed that it was, a small population. It wasn't just one man and one woman. So that was my version, and I brought it up to my parents. I said that's the only thing that makes any sense if we're to make any sense of the Genesis account. And in the course of the conversation, my parents actually, they nodded and yeah, okay. They didn't say no, you're wrong, and pull out their pocket Bibles and slam them down on the restaurant table and tell me that this is what the Bible teaches and this and this and this. I didn't get any kind of sermon, and really, it seemed to me like my parents were getting a little bit more relaxed on it as well. And I don't know if they were just agreeing for the sake of agreeing, or if they were agreeing because they know that there's just no way that you can back up the historicity of the Old Testament with scientific and historical evidence. And this was even, my parents don't jump on the internet and try and find proofs against the Bible. They jump on the internet and, check email, they check the weather, and my mom goes and finds clip art, and sometimes my mom will we bought her an iPod so that she could download, Christian radio, podcasts and broadcasts and whatnot. So, but late in this conversation, my parents actually told me, they were like, well, we also kind of think that maybe when we die, we get to come back. And I was like, what? Are you saying that you believe in reincarnation? And they just kind of, well, I don't know. I don't see why not. Which of course brings up all kinds of objections. And of course it also then just throws me for a loop, because I'm sitting there expecting my parents just to, toe the Christian line. It's like, this is how it is. This is how you were raised. This is what you're going to do. And it's those things. It's those bits and pieces of my parents saying that they believe that there's the possibility that we are reincarnated and have the chance to come back down to earth again after we die. Come back to earth after death. After going to heaven for a while and chilling and being like, okay, this is all cool and shit, but let's head back to Earth and do this again. It reminds me of the alternate ending to What Dreams May Come. If you haven't seen that, I highly recommend it. I thought it was a great movie. No matter what it was talking about, I just thought it was great. It was more the human side of things than it was the supernatural side of things even. But, so yeah, I mean, my parents' version of Christianity has tamed a lot. And I think a lot of it is because they're no longer responsible for their children. My sisters, the way that my family works with the traditional Christian values and traditional family and Christian values is basically the whole, the wife becomes the husband. Or no, the wife doesn't become the husband, although that would be interesting. The wife goes to the husband and they become one, and the husband is now responsible for all of the needs of the wife. This was perfectly exemplified by the fact that my parents bought a new car for all three of us kids because we were all going to go to the same college. And the rule was the last person that's left single gets to keep the car. So it was on loan to both of my sisters who stayed at the same college, and I drove around in a beater for a while in Ohio after I dropped out of college. But after both of my sisters got married, it was, okay, mom and dad no longer take care of you. Your husband now takes care of you. And so they took the car from the girls and gave it to me. So I got the brand new car. Well, it was a couple of years old, but I got the new car because I was the one that was single in the end, because both my sisters got married. And that's the belief of my family, or that was how my family was. Very traditional. You could say archaic if you want to. I think that my parents actually did a really good job of raising all three of us in order to have respect for each other and to have respect for other people. I wouldn't be the caring, empathetic person that I am now if it weren't for my parents, and if it weren't for being around my mom, and if it weren't for being forced to do things like before my first date, I had to read the book of etiquette. It's like little things like that. My dad would make me hold the door open for my sisters. All of those little things that I think actually they help me get through my days in the fact that I want to treat others with respect. I want to treat others as I would have them treat me as well. And so, I don't know, common decent courtesy is a lot of it. But anyway, as my parents have matured, and as my parents have gone through having all three of their kids move out and move on with their lives, they've relaxed a lot of stuff. I think that because they no longer feel as though they're responsible for the indoctrination and the thinking of their children, then they're not all that concerned about it anymore. It just is what it is. Plus, the longer you stay in Christianity, and this is what I talked about last time, the longer you stay in specifically if you stay in any certain congregation for any lengthy period of time, eventually you get to the point where the pastor that you're talking or that's talking to you, and the pastor that's standing up in front of you and giving you sermons, they have to go and they have to find something more interesting than just telling the story of Jesus every damn week, because that's boring and nobody wants that. People want more. And so and because the Bible is so prevalent, and because there are so many people out there that are going, oh, holy shit, did you know that, well, they probably aren't saying that, but anyway, did you know that in, 1 Samuel 4:18, when it says, and it came to pass when he made mention of the ark of God, and he fell from the seat backward by the side of the gate, and his neck brake, and he died, and he was an old man and heavy, and he had judged Israel 40 days. What the hell did I just read? Okay, somebody died. Oh, Eli. Okay, so, Skeptic's Annotated Bible for the win. Okay, so, someone somewhere is going to say, hey, did you know that in the original Hebrew, that verse actually mentions that dogs go to heaven? That kind of thing, like I talked about last week. Or, the verse before that, if you read it in the original Hebrew, it's a prophecy for Jesus coming back in 2042. I mean, people do that all the time. And eventually you get to the point where you're just bored And so you go and you find something else. You go and you're like, let's see, what can I find in Exodus 32? Oh, okay, well, let me flip over here. Oh, what can I find in Esther 4? And what can I find in Isaiah 52? And so you go and you look for all of these other things, and you try and find things, and you look at this and that, and basically what it comes down to, and this is what, in my opinion, makes religion so stifling, is the fact that eventually, and you can't see it, but I'm shaking my Bible here, eventually you run into the fact that there is only so much information contained within this one book. There's nothing else here. You can twist it, you can retranslate it, you can mistranslate it, you can put it together backwards, forwards, left, right, upside down. You can read anything into it that you want, because you can simply say, oh, that chapter is just allegorical, and it actually means to say this, or something along those lines. You can only do so much with this one book. And I look over at my bookshelf, well, not that one because it's empty. I look over at the bookshelf over on the other side of the room, and I see a book about science. I see a book about philosophy. I see a book about creative writing, which apparently the people in the Bible didn't do a whole lot of reading about that. I see a book about a historical figure, a biography. There is more on one bookshelf. There is more information contained. Oh, and then there's the one on space. And then there's the Idiot's Guide to Understanding Einstein, which anyone that's been listening to my podcast knows that I haven't made it very far into that one. But anyway, there is more information, more knowledge, and more subjects to talk about, and that aren't open to interpretation, so much interpretation at least. There is more contained on one of my bookshelves than is in the entirety of the Bible. And yet, for centuries and centuries, and my entire life, and my parents' entire life, they've been focusing on what's contained in one book. People accuse atheists of being angry, and the reason that a lot of us get angry so often is because we say there is so much more to your world than can be contained within one book. It's not possible for you to say that all of the answers is in one book. I mean, shit, man. An encyclopedia is bigger than the Bible. And so obviously, when you're looking for answers, you're going to find a lot more in an encyclopedia than you're going to find in the Bible. Okay, that actually felt really good. I just finished reading Seth Andrews' Deconverted. For those of you that don't know, Seth Andrews is the Thinking Atheist. Actually, he is not the Thinking Atheist. He actually goes into a lot at the end, kind of about branding yourself, I suppose. He talks about how he views a lot of his activism. I was unaware that he had accomplished so much in such a small amount of time. The Thinking Atheist website didn't actually go up until, I believe, 2009, he said. So in just 4 years, the Thinking Atheist website has turned into what it is. He's got his Blog Talk Radio. He has his YouTube channel. He's got his Facebook channel, etc. Also, those of you that have given me helpful hints on how to get a hold of Seth Andrews, I actually found him on Facebook, and we haven't really talked at all. I just left a comment on his page, but anyway, I will eventually talk to him, and we'll see what happens from that. But now that I can get to him very quickly in a non-stalker sort of way, then we've got that down. So anyway, so he talks about in here how when the veil is lifted, when Christianity is pulled from our eyes, and we see the world through secular eyes, and we see what we've done. In his case, he was a radio personality, and he was personally responsible for bringing, I'm going to just use their phrasing here, for bringing thousands upon thousands of people into the flock and into the belief and saving their souls. He felt that responsibility, and when he shed his belief, he felt like he had thrown himself into his atheism and his atheist activism so strongly that he had to kind of stop a couple of times and go, whoa, this is kind of crazy. Why am I doing this? And I have felt the exact same thing. I mean, most of this book, Deconverted, I could have skimmed it because there's so much of it that is familiar to me. It struck home to the point that there were a couple of times that it brought me to tears. I wasn't sobbing or anything, but I did shed a few tears in reading it, because it really is just, it's so prevalent for people to finally shed that belief and then want to throw themselves into pulling other people out. I just saw on Twitter that one of the people that I've been following since I first got into atheism is kind of pulling away and saying, hey, life is taking too much of my time. I've got a kid on the way, et cetera, et cetera. I need to back away from this, and maybe I'll be back and maybe I won't be back. And that happens with a lot of people. And the reason for it is because we find this atheist activism as something that many of us feel is either untapped audience share, or it's our penance. Seth Andrews says in his book that he kind of feels that it's his penance, that the Thinking Atheist website, Blog Talk Radio, and YouTube channel are all his penance. He's paying for all of the damage that he's done. And while I don't feel that I've done a lot of damage, I can completely and totally understand that mindset. I didn't spend a lot of my time trying to convert people. I spent most of my 20s actually in the exact opposite, being angry and wanting nothing to do with, I still believed, but I didn't want anything to do with God. I didn't want anything to do with religion or the Bible. I was, for a time, I was living in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is where Seth Andrews is and where he's from. And, I had friends that went to Oral Roberts University, and I would talk to them, and they would ask me for advice, and I would give them advice, and it had never had anything to do whatsoever with God. It was good advice. I was really good at giving advice, but it never had anything to do with God. And I never, ever, ever said, well, I don't have an answer for you, but if you go home and if you pray, then I'm sure God will guide you and will help you find the answers. Because I wasn't that kind of person, and I wasn't the kind of dumbass and asshole that wasn't going to help my friends. I'm not going to I'm trying, the people that tell you to go and pray and to read your Bible to find the answers are the kinds of people that don't have any answers. They're the kinds of people that can't help you or won't help you, and they just want to say, nope, go pray to the imaginary being and see if you can come up with it on your own. And so paying that penance for all of those years of telling people, this is what God's done in my life and this and that. That's how Seth feels. I don't feel that so much, like I said, because I wasn't really active in the Christian community at all. But I totally get it. I totally understand what he's saying. So anyway, that is definitely a good book. It's I highly recommend it. I support the Thinking Atheist in actually a couple of different ways. Something that I probably will never do. Thinking Atheist recently put out a video and did a podcast about asking for just some financial support if you can. And I pledged $10 a year. That was all they were asking, was $10 a year. And I was like, you know what? $10 for all of the content that he provides is perfectly fine. So again, I'm not saying give me any money. Don't give me any money. If I ever get to the point where I need money from you guys, I will find another way to get it. I want this, just like Seth wants it to be with the Thinking Atheist, I want this to be free forever. If there's ever a time that I ask you for money, it'll probably be for some kind of charity. So anyway, I think that is it. I'm pretty much out of things to talk. Oh, Skeptic's Annotated Bible. I want to... and to answer this question, King James Version. A lot of people have said that they're like, oh, really? You thought that the King James Version is hard to read or annoying to read? Well, the reason that it is because I'm not really big on Shakespeare either. I like Shakespeare's, I don't know, some of it, the quotable parts, but maybe I didn't read enough of Old English in order to ever really appreciate it. I know I might lose some listeners on saying this, but it's kind of like the Beatles. I don't like the Beatles. I appreciate what the Beatles did for music. It's kind of like Elvis Presley. I actually like Elvis Presley a little bit better, but most of his songs I don't really care for. But I appreciate what both of them did for music, but I don't really care for their music. So, I know. I'm sorry. Anti-Beatles fan. Okay, so what I wanted to say about the Skeptic's Annotated Bible, and this was the part that I couldn't say last time. As you're reading through Skeptic's Annotated Bible, in the margins, there are these little sections that actually give you, that mention something. And I'll just read them off to you. They're either an absurdity, an injustice, cruelty or violence, intolerance, the good stuff, contradictions, conflicts with science and history, biblical family values, interpretation, misogyny and insults to women, sex, because there's a lot of that in the Bible, false prophecy and misquotes, language, oh dear, and homosexuality, which interestingly is only mentioned 25 times in the Bible. So as you're reading through, over in the margins, they'll actually have a little icon that'll be like, a question mark going, what? Or the sex will be, ooh la la, that kind of thing off to the side. And it just points things out. And especially the ones that are contradictions or false prophecies and that sort of thing. Those are helpful as you read through because, well, it's like the student Bible with the notes and the notations that actually show where the Bible got it wrong. So Skeptic's Annotated Bible is also available online. Just do a search for Skeptic's Annotated Bible because I don't know exactly what the website is. It's available all online. You don't even have to buy it. So I'm not just shilling. Is that the word for it? Whatever. I'm not just trying to get you guys to buy copies of it. Although, like I said, the quality of it, spectacular. Okay, so that's the episode. I hope everybody is having a wonderful day, whatever day it is that you are listening to this. I will see you all in 2 weeks, and I hope that you are all enjoying the spring weather or the fall weather if you happen to be south of the equator. All right, everyone, take care and have a great day.